Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Past guests include Devin Howland talking about economic development in Fayetteville, Yoni Schmidt on my team at Keyrenter talking about property owners' frequently asked questions, and Kevin Evans of Liberty Air Services talking about HVAC systems, how they work, and why they're very complicated. Today's episode is brought to you by Chris Lyle State Farm. Chris Lyle State Farm helps you protect your most precious assets and investments. Whether it's your home and auto, investment rental properties, or other valuables, call Chris Lyle State Farm for a quick and painless phone call to potentially save double digits on all of your insurance needs. Visit diallyle.com or call his office at 918-878-7771 for a painless quote. Today's episode is also brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we're a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. Brian, you know more about this than most people, but it's hard to line up contractors sometimes. You got to make ready that needs to get done in a reasonable amount of time. And after a tenant leaves a property and contractors are busy, it's hard to get them to show up consistently, et cetera, and work seems to drag on forever. That's what we try to avoid. And at Keyrenter, we line up our dedicated vendors so that unit turns happen super quickly and we get more money back into the pockets of our owners. And that's why it doesn't matter what rental you have, a single family home, a condo, townhome, an apartment, we've got the management solutions that you need. Go to keyrenterpmc.com or email us at info@keyrenterpmc.com. I've got to give a quick shout out to Joshua Cole from Security Bank, who originally introduced us, yeah, I think that's who it was. And I was looking to buy real estate early in my Tulsa career. And he said, you got to meet this guy, Brian Elliott. He's got something interesting that you should look at. And you and I spoke. And I think that still goes down. I love transactions, Brian. I love transactions that are not adversarial because you can be so zero sum. And I still remember us having issues with the, I don't remember what happened, the bank or an appraisal. I don't know what it was. But I'd email you or I'd call you and I'd be like, hey, Brian, I need to extend the contract. And you're always like, cool, no problem. And I was like, oh man, I worked myself up for nothing. I thought he was going to tell us to, to get lost or whatever. And we probably extended that contract 2 or 3 times. And ultimately we closed. It was a 28 unit apartment complex that we've now sold in turn, but we bought that a while back. And that's how you and I got introduced. So let me introduce you real quick. Brian is born and raised in Tulsa, formerly in banking. He's now managing the family office at David Sharp, which has in excess of 500,000 square feet of commercial and residential space. And there's some land in there as well. Brian's been with David Sharp for 8 years, which means he's seen incredible transformation of the downtown area in their time working together. It certainly does not look anything like it did when I moved to Tulsa in 2017. So we're excited, Brian, to learn about some of the work that you've done while you've been part of David Sharp's organization. Brian Elliott, welcome to the show. How are you?
Right on. Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. I want to start with your transition from banking to the real estate world. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, why that happened, and when that transition was.
Okay. I was kind of a mediocre banker, probably 2009 to 2015.
Yeah.
Kind of got into the lending. Actually, first loan I made was for Security Bank was on David Sharp's Fairfield.
Wow.
Fairfield Inn there. And it was 2010. And Jeff Hartman, SJS Hospitality, they get the Courtyard and several hotels. They couldn't get financing. And it was just remarkable to me that, names like Sharp and Hartman, SJS, some premier hospitality group, and then, David Sharp, long time local, were having trouble with financing because those banks were still kind of anchored to the great financial crisis, 2009, and were not really lending. It was pretty obvious, families like Zaros, GKFF, they were already investing in the arts district. So to me, it looked like kind of a layup project.
Yeah.
So Security Bank stepped up there and made the loan. At the time, I think it was one of the larger loans the bank had made, and it really worked out well. I think it's consistently been one of the top performing hotels in Tulsa as far as RevPAR. That's revenue per available room. It's ADR multiplied by occupancy.
Average daily rate multiplied by occupancy. Yeah.
Yep.
And was that original loan for the asset or for asset and operation of that hotel?
Yep. So it was to build the building. So they had that half block already. They owned for several years, and I guess rewind a little bit. Elliott had opened the tavern, so we were really familiar. My wife was managing the tavern at the time, and so very familiar with the area. It was really obvious, and bank stepped out, kind of made a little bit of a larger loan for them. Worked out well. Then I became kind of David's, main banker, so to say. Started financing most of his deals for, I guess, until about 2015. I moved over here full time. I kind of knew real estate from working as with my dad, like kitchen remodels, kind of a demo guy. I can demo pretty well.
You were the cheap labor?
I was. So doing a lot of demo. I mean, I was kind of, I can hold the dumb end of the tape measure and I can do demo. But then, and also from the bank side, so you think rent and operating expense and NOI, but you really I didn't know what went into real estate. So kind of a steeper learning curve, for me to kind of like what it's like to operate real estate. He cut me loose early on deals. So started making deals. I came over in February. I think first deal was in July of that year. So then, so that's kind of how it happened. Started really small, just so I could, try to work through some blunders,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got here.
I'd love to hear about the blunders, but before I do, sure. I want to ask you. I want to ask you. I was listening today to a podcast where the person was saying that they have a list on their website of all the stupid things they've ever said. And I was like, that's actually great. We're all human, and we should all acknowledge that we've said some stupid things in our life. But I want to ask you about that first loan. When David came to Security and wanted to finance the construction of that hotel, which is still there, by the way, and you said is doing very well. Mm-hmm. Was it that Security was open to this sort of thing, or was it that you were the banker that was willing to put your neck out on the line for this specific deal? And how did you do that?
I think the bank was pretty excited to work with a group like that. I think it was a great opportunity. I think it's a really well-known owners and operators, developers. I think it was probably mostly them, just excitement for the opportunity, and then the structure had to make sense. So we actually did do a SBA 504. So that's a structure where the bank generally lends 50%. Then SBA will do a second mortgage, I think in this case for 35%, and then so there's 15% equity in the deal. So yeah,
I mean, did anyone think at the bank that this guy, David Sharp, who's a respected local businessman, but did they ever think that, we've got a junior banker running lead on this project, and David Sharp's, pulling one over on this junior banker? We've got to be careful and make sure that we support this guy and that he's not getting out over his skis.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I was green, extremely green. So I'm not sure what all they thought, but yeah.
But nobody stopped you. Nobody was like, whoa, Brian, pull it back.
Yeah, right. No problems. Yeah.
Great. So tell us about some of the first projects that you did, the blunders, and how you navigated them. I mean, to be transparent, you guys have tackled some big projects that other people in Tulsa have looked at multiple times and walked clearly in the opposite direction of. So you guys have what we call chutzpah, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, the first deal, it was bought a bad mortgage. And so I thought, oh, well, the underlying is, say $1.1 million or $1.2 million. The first mortgage payoff was $650, $640. I thought, well, no brainer. Mm-hmm. Well, so, the legal that we hired, wasn't fully versed. I don't want to pass the blame on him at all. It was my fault. But he, there was maybe a foreclosure kind of in process that had been paused. So we, and kind of a long story, but nevertheless, we leveraged that note. So pledged a note to the bank so I could get a little larger piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so you pledged the note, which is your
Yeah.
asset, to the bank so you could get
A little extra leverage. Yeah. So we could, we leveraged that note probably, I think it's a little over 60%.
Got it. They gave you additional cash so that you could go in and do
Well,
rehab
yes,
to this
we
building.
put up about 200 and borrowed about 400 against the 640 some acquisition, just rough numbers.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so when the bank goes ahead and they file an assignment, and what we didn't do, and what I don't think I was certainly too green to know, and attorneys saying, so we didn't file what's it now? See, I'm kind of spacing on what it's called, but it was a substitution creditor. So it's basically,
Never heard of that.
yeah. So I guess since the foreclosure's in process, we needed to file a substitution creditor, and that didn't get done. So we're banging along. I'm trying to do a deed in lieu and all these things, and I'm like, worst case, we get paid. We've got this default rate interest. I'm walking around kind of cocky, talking about arbitrage and all these things, like a total idiot. And I get a call from actually it was the banks, Security Banks Legal. It called me on behalf of the borrower, we owned his mortgage.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, you've got a fatal flaw in your, you didn't file a substitution creditor. And I kind of panicked, not really knowing what that meant. So then I was like, well, hey, I'm a hot shot. So I called the owner of Security and I said, hey, your attorneys are coming after us here. You're kind of, I think it seems like a conflict. I think, they're suing us on behalf of our borrower and we're your borrower. And so it was Dan Buford owns Security. And so he called the attorney and I guess kind of called them off. And so I'm really feeling cocky, it's like, hey, all right, yeah, look at me. I'm a real hot shot.
Sounds like you were, but okay. All right.
Well, no. So then he ends up getting another attorney and just put the pants on us. And so we ended up, banging around for several months. I'm, kind of nervous, and all this. And finally, we knew he was being funded, and I knew it was Aaron Meek. Aaron Meek is a real active investor along Route 66, really, really solid, kind of under the radar guy. I figured he was the one kind of bankrolling the borrower, kind of putting him with some pretty solid attorneys. So I text him and just kind of goosed him a little, and we both kind of knew what was going on. And so we wound up settling. We ended up, I think, I'm going to say maybe $15,000 we made after banging around for 18 months or something like that.
Wait, but in essence, the substitution of creditor.
It did. So our first position was covered. Our first position was covered, but all the fees and interest and everything else that we try to accrue to our benefit, that was what was up for loss, I guess, so to say. So
okay, but so you have the primary mortgage. It wasn't going. Mm-hmm. He wasn't making good on it. So you've got a bad mortgage. Mm-hmm. And then you say, look, I'll take back the property in lieu of the mortgage, right? I'm going to foreclose on this mortgage, mm-hmm. on the property to settle the mortgage. Mm-hmm. And then you went and took that mortgage document, you levered it further to do the work. And then they called you and said, you don't have a substitution of creditor, which means what exactly?
You need to start the foreclosure process over again.
Got it. So you were back to square one in terms of the foreclosure. So now you have a leveraged mortgage document. You're out cash into this building that you really are not in foreclosure of. The person, the borrower still owns the majority of it, or still owns the right to it in essence.
That's right. Yeah. More or less. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And Aaron Meek, is he still around? I've not heard that name before.
Yeah. So yeah, he's got, so the building now we can say Aaron owns it. He ended up, making a deal with the guy. He owns it. It's the southeast corner of 11th and Peoria, that whole little complex right there, where Wildflower Cafe.
Oh yeah, that's a great little building. I love Wildflower, by the way. What a great. It used to be Corner Cafe, right?
Yes, it was.
That was the kind of place where the waitresses would ash cigarettes into their hairnets and then give you white toast.
And there were probably 65 stolen lawnmowers on the roof of the building.
How did that? Why? I think Corner Cafe at Sheridan and on the north side is the only restaurant that I know of in Tulsa. Even as I say that, I think there's one more that I heard of where you can still smoke inside, which is wild.
Yeah.
I walked in there and there's like a whole smoking section, and I thought, I'm not the health department. I'm not a detective. I'm just curious, how does this work exactly? And they told me, as long as you have a separate HVAC system and you're grandfathered in, you can have a smoking section.
It feels like Shoney's in the 80s or something.
But you know what? It's owned by the Syrian guy in Syria, for example, kind of like China. I would venture that 3/4 of men smoke cigarettes. So it's culturally, it seems like an appropriate, relic of the past. Okay, so that's the first one that you ended up making $15,000 after a lot of hard work, 18 months of hard work. What's another good one?
Let's see, another just a loser move.
And then we'll get into your winner moves, because there's a lot of good winners.
Oh man, this one's kind of funny. So I was kind of working Route 66 a little bit. We were making some investments there. This had been 2015 and 16.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of picking out some assets I thought were all right, and writing letters. So wrote a letter to a church that owned a pretty good commercial corner. And anyway, it hit, and we started talking, started trying to make a deal, and ended up making a deal. And they were said, oh well, the tenant in there is he's really wanting to buy the property. So if you'll agree to do this number, we'll sell it. It's like, all right. So go ahead and we make that deal. Sorry, I got a little distracted.
Bring the kids in. It's like,
and so my wife had an appointment, so I got the kids up here at the office. I think we're good now. So anyway,
let's talk about family after this story. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So
we'll share our love of twins.
We make the deal, and I really didn't realize how far along or really know anything at all about like the prior tenant or an existing tenant wanting to buy it, or what the negotiations were like, or anything at all. So like we make a deal that we're going, we close, and it I'll just say, so 11th and Yale, southwest corner, Tally, I guess he had been working the deal with the church to buy the building for some time. And so we kind of snuck in and, bought it. And I don't know that I've ever had it was a challenge, just to say, he felt like we kind of stole, from him. And, I say, totally clueless. I had no idea. Obviously there's no contract that got busted or anything like that. But yeah, it was just like, oh my gosh, just super random on the timing. The letter just kind of hit right. And I mean,
so what was the implication exactly? That it was just like a hostile,
very much,
that was super hostile?
Yeah. So he'd kind of spread through the building, over time, and, had quite a bit of the space kind of taken up, and was paying just hardly anything. And so we had, some rental rate adjustments, and, and just, kind of, moving things around a little. But no, it worked out fine. Good relationship now. He's got I think his business is doing great, and I think he's happy. Yeah, it's all good now. But holy cow, that was.
I haven't heard much about the GOAT, the greatest of all time, where they combine all sorts of global cuisines, the best of all global cuisines, and bring it together in one restaurant. Have you heard? I mean, is that I don't even know. Is that still around? Is the GOAT still a thing?
We ate at Bohemian last night, and I noticed there were some folks walking in over there.
Okay, so Bohemian, he doesn't own Bohemian, but yeah, there are people.
Yeah, right. No, so I think it's maybe Tally's son, I think, has the GOAT. And I'm not familiar with that structure at all, but I saw there like there were some folks over there.
So you ended up being okay in that deal, even though you had a little bit of a hostile start and the takeover didn't go as well?
For sure. Oh, but that one, oh my gosh, yeah. So we are that's how the deal kind of worked. Now we're probably, it's pretty high return on equity on that one.
I mean, one beautiful thing about real estate in general is that I can't say it would be a step too far to say that it's hard to make a mistake, but oftentimes things look cheap in the rearview mirror. And, rough starts can blind you to the notion that in 10 years, you're probably going to be sitting on an asset that's worth a lot more than it is today. Yeah. It sounds like that's the way it is. I mean, when we bought an apartment complex called Old South, and my friend David Charney from Capital Homes and Greg, what's Greg's last name that does a bunch of multifamily? He's got a building over there on 15th in Boston. Greg Guerrero. the two of them, seasoned multifamily investors, both looked at it and went, I don't know, Matt, this is a pretty hairy property. I'm not sure you should be buying this. That boiler chiller system looks pretty precariously positioned on failure. And I went, you know what, I'm doing this. And you've got to, at some point, you've got to cut your chops on a tougher property. And, we sold it. We owned it for 4 years or 5 years, and we sold it and made a profit for all of our investors. But it was tough. My God, that was a tough property to own. And the chiller would go out in the middle of summer, and all of a sudden I've got 60 properties, 60 apartments with no air, and trying to keep myself off of Fox News. And then the heat would go out in winter, and again, trying to keep myself off of Fox News, the whole deal. But in hindsight, things always look like, pretty good deals. I want to talk for a second about the property that David Sharp and you, facilitated by you, sold to us it must have been 2018. It was called the Kelly Apartments. When we bought it, it's a beautiful, beautiful kind of 1920s build, red brick. But you guys at the time are transitioning away from residential stuff, and you sold it to us. Tell us a little bit about that property, how you came to own it. If you were involved in that acquisition, I don't know, but how you came to own it and why you ended up selling it.
Yeah. So David bought that. I don't remember how, but he bought it just right in the kind of the depths of 09, late 09, I think. I think he might have
from
bought
the bank.
I think he may have. Yeah, ONB, I think. Just super, super cheap. We were doing, so I'd come over and 15, so he'd owned it for a while. And based on what I could kind of see, we'd just made no progress in 6 years on it. And we're just doing not a great job managing the property. And I kind of had a 1031 teed up that I thought was a better fit for us and an area we were a little more active in. And so that was kind of what brought that sale. I think combination of having a deal teed up in an area we were active in, and then just really doing a poor job managing the property.
I think one good lesson from the renovation that you guys started and that we kind of carried through, is that if you can prove a business model in an asset and let somebody else take advantage of it, you can take part of the upside and leave enough meat on the bone for somebody else to come through and do all the hard work on the back end and then reap that additional benefit. So you guys had come through, you'd started with all the Logic Heating and Air. Drew Cole had come through and done all the new HVAC systems. A lot of the heating units had been boxed in closets, but not all of them. And it was 50% occupied. So you guys were able to sell that vision, make a profit, exchange that money. And then we came through and did all of the additional renovations. I think we put in new windows. We did a bunch of tiling and beautiful period specific work in the bathroom. So we put these hex tiles, and we put new tub surrounds, new windows, and the hardwood floors were beautiful. We polished them, and then we finished the I think it was 28 units, and there were 14 that were occupied. So we finished the 14 renovations, and then slowly we turned all the other units and completed those renovations. So we had a nice, functioning property. But the lesson is, if you own a property and you don't really want it long term, you can do a renovation, bump rents on those renovated properties, do 5% or 10% of the property, and then sell that vision to somebody else and say, just complete this work and you take the upside. And that's a very win-win situation for property owners that is sometimes overlooked. I want to go back for a second. The first time you used legal on that transaction where you were the mortgage holder, you didn't like that attorney. Maybe was a little bit green. Who are you using now for legal that you love and that you would recommend to other people?
Yeah, Jake Calvani at Red Doorward Law. Yeah,
got it. So use Doorward's office. They've got a lot of great attorneys over there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I'm always surprised when I see the roster. I'm like, and that person's involved in this, that, or the other. They're doing great stuff. Who do you guys use on the banking side? And then we'll talk about some success stories. But who do you use on the banking side these days?
Okay. Bankers are Jared Cable at First National Okmulgee, Lauren Smith at Vast Bank, and Josh Cole at Security Bank.
And why would you choose one bank over another when you're shopping a deal around?
Size. Now I think we're getting pretty well maxed out at security, and then we just kind of it just kind of varies. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg Graham also at First National Broken Arrow. That's the other one. So
so your exposure your exposure from those banks, they're not looking to add more assets to their portfolio that is
Yeah,
exposure
well,
to you guys.
so yeah, I think yeah, so we get a little bit close to the legal lending limit. A lot of our stuff I think gets participated, so I think they're it's a good appetite, but we don't load the boat with one necessarily over another or anything.
And do you do any rate shopping, or you kind of like you're not going to move for half a point or whatever else?
Yeah.
What other term
Yeah,
negotiations do you
no,
do?
so I fought this a lot when I was at Security Bank, and it was, and so I know, you know, what it's like, I guess, to compete with some of the banks that are rate driven. And there's a lot of borrowers, I think that's the model, is grind on the bank. And I think that's fine. When you, I think when you've kind of got a relationship with, I think we're at 4 banks now. I think we can, dictating terms probably isn't the right way to say it, but we can pretty much get done, kind of what we want, if that makes sense. We'll pay a few basis points, than we would if we were just drilling down on rate, but we get what we're looking for, I think, so far as structure and
Yeah.
terms.
I remember Josh Cole. We have a line of credit with Josh Cole at Security Bank, and coming into March of 2020, I said to him, I'm thinking about pulling my line of credit and just letting it sit in cash because this uncertainty in the market and what's going to happen over the next 6 months is frightening. I want to make sure that I've got enough cash, and I don't want you to pull my line of credit with zero utilization and say, now's the time that the bank's tightening up. And he said to me, we're a community bank. This is when we step into support. There's no way I'll pull the line of credit from you. You've been a good borrower for many, many years or whatever. At that time, I don't know, 3 or 4 years we've been banking with Security since we started the business.
Yep.
And that meant a ton to me. Josh is a great banker. We've done a lot of banking together. But that's, I think, part and parcel of what a great local community bank does. They reassure you that they've got your back. When you need capital, they'll be able to provide it. And some of that leads right into having relationships. David Charney always said to me, have good relationships with bankers and have a bunch of them, because when you need capital, you don't want to be starting a new relationship, walking in with a suit and tie, trying to explain to somebody your business model. You'd rather have borrowed a couple of times, repaid a couple of times, and have established creditworthiness beyond your individual credit score for a personal guarantee. You'd rather have that relationship kind of, on demand. And so having a bunch of good relationships with borrowers is a great thing for sure. A lot of our clients call us and ask us who we bank with, and we send a lot of referrals to Scott Reeves at Chickasaw Community Bank and Eric Proctor over at First Bank of Oklahoma, and at Josh. Although Josh Security's less interested, they're more interested in industrial. They're less interested in real estate these days, I guess, partly because their bucket, as they explain it, of real estate is kind of full and they're looking to expand. But having great banking relationships, plural, is a super important thing. All right, let's turn to some of your successes. I mean, I want to talk about the Abundant Life building, which is an ongoing project. I want to talk about the hotel. You guys own a ton of Main Street downtown, right down the street from the hotel. You own so much cool real estate. I'd love to know how David got involved in that real estate downtown back when downtown was not a valuable place. I mean, now we're vast, where I don't even know what that building is called, where Spaghetti Warehouse used to be. That was the only reason people went downtown.
Right.
After hours, certainly the Brady Arts District, or the Arts District as it's called now. How did David end up with all that real estate, and how is it converted over time into a more valuable product?
Yeah, I think David went to Tucson, University of Arizona for undergrad and law school. Came back here, I think, in 1980. And his first building was a master lease on what's now the Midtown Adult Superstore.
Right across from Juniper. Okay. Yeah. What's that like? What is that? 4th and Elgin or something? No,
3rd and Elgin, northwest corner of 3rd and Elgin. Okay. So he, originally the second floor was just packed full of called day rooms, flop house,
Wow.
People would pay $5 a night to sleep there.
Unrelated to the Adult Superstore? Unrelated.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
So he had a master lease on that. I don't remember any of the terms or anything like that, but people then, all the kind of, I don't know if that cohort was aging out or what, and he was kind of the young guy on the block. I guess he would have been late 20s or early 30s, right around there, 30 something, and or late 20s, I guess. people started calling him like, "Hey, I hear you're actually buying some of this stuff." And so I think his first actual acquisition was what's Dilly Diner now,
Wow.
and that was actually a 2-story building.
And you
And
guys still own that?
yep.
Wow.
So he bought that. This was kind of a funny story. Bought it. Called, I think it was maybe called the Dixie Rooms or something like that. And I think there were maybe 40 units up there. There was a fire, apparently, kind of normal, I guess, a fire. So they scraped the second floor off, put a lid on it, and now it leases to Dilly Diner.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I'm just pulling it up. I think that's a 1-story building, right? So they just
Yeah. So it caught on fire, and they just kind of scraped the second floor off and just kind of put a roof on it.
But when you look at it
Funny
online,
thing there, yeah. So funny thing there, the purchase price, and I think everything he's invested in that building is probably about 2/3 of what it rents for annually now.
wow.
So that's the long term hold, kind of almost forever hold type mentality that he's kind of, that's what he sees and thinks. I think when some of these make some of these moves.
But this was originally what on the bottom? If it was like,
Oh, I don't
short
even.
stays.
Who knows? I mean, liquor store. Who knows? I don't even know. I don't remember at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Okay, so he starts buying this, which is Blue Dome District. I don't know if it
Yeah,
was
that
called
was
that
Blue
back
Dome.
then,
I
but
think he had maybe a couple more in there. El Guapo building. Well,
wow.
it's not El Guapo now. I don't remember what all over there. There's maybe a couple more over there. I can't recall. But then, yeah, so kind of went over. I think he and Sager were kept kind of running into each other. Michael Sager just passed away, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. He
Wow.
was as an operator in the Blue Dome area. So it was just them two just kind of banging into each other constantly. So David went north of the tracks to the Arts District and started doing the same thing. And kind of Sager bought up everything, I guess, over there in Blue Dome. And yeah, so same story, day rooms on the second floor and just first floor liquor stores and whatever else. And then just eventually started turning, just, evict a liquor store or, just get rid of the people up there on the day rooms and just kind of started turning.
I mean, so much of the story of the Arts District and of the Blue Dome District is tied up with Elliott Nelson of McNelly's group, and he's coming on the pod later. I don't know, maybe early mid-February. But so much of it is Elliott taking on risk and putting in restaurants and revitalizing that portion of downtown. I think even realistically cannibalizing his own business by putting restaurants next to each other that probably weren't sustainable at the time, or maybe I guess they were because they've endured, but at the risk of cannibalizing downtown to grow at the risk of cannibalizing his investments in restaurants, growing the pie larger so people thought of it more as a destination where they would start going out to dinner and stuff. But that, I suspect, played a huge part in making the area that David Sharp had invested in more attractive and palatable over time. And then obviously there's some George Kaiser stuff that came through. There's 36 Degrees North that really catalyzed some growth there. But there's also, I mean, all the other stuff, Chimera, fine, that's a little bit later, but Sound Pony, Canes, a little bit further north, the Brady Theater or the Tulsa Theater, whatever it's called, all that kind of stuff, that must have been there. This stuff has been there the whole time, right? And so it just kind of all worked together to make that area so much more attractive.
Right. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the hotel. That's where 21st and Boulder, 21st and something other.
Yeah, the 1840 South Boulder. It's across from now Dreamkeepers Park.
Love that. Is that a change? Is that a changed name? Is that a new name for that park? Or
it was Veterans Park, now Dreamkeepers. Yes.
Cool. What precipitated that change?
I think Veterans Park now is over by the VFW on 6th.
Cool.
That park is now Veterans Park, and this is now kind of a because the council oak tree and everything over there, it's native.
Cool.
So we kind of did Route 66, like I said, 2015 and 16, and then 2017, trying to find kind of what we thought was kind of a new neighborhood area to kind of go try to make a move in, and went to the Riverview neighborhood. I live over there in Riverview. Felt pretty obvious. Confluence, I'd say, of a lot of positive things, gathering place, river parks, trails, midtown, downtown. It's just
Yeah.
seemed like a good area to make a pretty good bet in. Bought some buildings and some land and things over there. Thought the first project we'd do would get one of the more difficult ones kind of out of the way. Was that it's a brutalist building, used to be a multifamily building, kind of a oh yeah, subsidized housing. Is about half occupied, really rough shape.
When did you guys
The
look
guy
at that?
that owned it, do what?
When did you guys look at it and acquire that?
We so I probably negotiated with the owner for several months. He was a little bit hard, tried to buy it, and anyway, it took a while. Ended up buying into the LLC. So he's in it. Let's see. Anyway, so we worked through. We relocated the folks that were on housing. Most of them stayed in the neighborhood. They're over at Mansion House, just other places kind of locally. We placed everybody but one tenant. Just kind of maybe an ornery person. I'm not sure what his issue was, but anyway, so that's, I guess we got everybody out. I think it was the end of 19. I just kind of started doing, a little bit of demo and kind of picking around and developing an idea. Kind of wanted to fit the neighborhood. Neighborhood's a little kind of hippie, kind of urban, kind of vibe over there. So I kind of came up with this Brute Hotel idea. It's brutalist architecture, and then kind of a tropical brutalism, I think, is maybe the interior design.
Like brutalism's the exterior design or the interior?
Yeah, brutalism exterior, that
exterior,
concrete.
Yeah.
That concrete and real, I don't know what you say, Eastern Bloc style, pretty stark. Anyway, so the inside, a lot of plants and wood, it's pretty nice. I'm not trying to be, bleeding edge of luxury by any stretch, but just a cool vibe, I think, is the aim, kind of a wellness hotel. I think it'll turn out all right. Really just trying to fit the neighborhood,
I had a chance to take a tour through the hotel recently. There's awesome formwork, concrete work. The kitchen is all formwork, formed concrete. Looks awesome, and it matches the exterior. I mean, it's high end, done nicely. The wood's all being manufactured from a local mill where they're doing all the carpentry installations. So the beds are all built in, and there's a lot of other cool, night tables and all sorts of other cool stuff that's built in. You guys have done a fantastic job of that, and I'm excited. I'm excited to. I should complete that sentence. I'm excited to see how it turns out when it's fully done and designed, and the interior work has been finished. I was surprised that the average daily rate that you guys are going for is surprisingly reasonable. I mean, I can't recall exactly. You might know the numbers better off the top of your head, but like even during Tulsa Tough or Iron Man or some of the other ones, the expectation is that it'll be like $300 a night for a spacious room, and then kind of other times of the year it'll be 120, 150, something like that. Is that roughly right?
I mean, yeah, I don't even know. I mean, 300 almost makes me blush, to be honest. We are, that was kind of the aim, is really just try to do something that's nice and comfortable. But then it's, the thought was, eventually we'll run into tougher times. And if somebody, wants to come in from a Toka, and go to gathering place the weekend, it's a good, affordable place, hopefully a good, affordable place. They can, we put a rooftop restaurant and bar up there.
That is awesome.
Just really kind of, I think it'll be neat, and try to, pass on some of what we've done inexpensively to guests, basically.
And when does it open officially?
We're aiming for May. That's another just bungle on my part, talk about mistakes. Didn't really set out with a plan, and just kind of bopping along. And sorry, getting a little choked up. It's
emotional story.
Yeah. So anyway, I've learned a lot, so to say. And the inside, we'll probably have the inside finished this month. And you have to come back through and kind of check it out. But then we should have site work finished, put a pool in, site work, hopefully be open by Memorial Day.
Awesome. And so then it'll be a space you can actually do a wedding party there, and they can use the outside, the Dreamcatcher Park, and some of the space right outside for weddings. Is that right? Yeah,
we're putting out and behind the building, we have kind of a backyard, kind of a patio area, a little green space back there. A lot of plants, doing a lot of plants. I think be pretty cool.
Okay, let's talk about abundant life. And I want to hear your whole perspective, but before we hear your perspective, I'll tell you that Brian Freeze, my wife somehow drove by that building in like 2018. We were starting Keyrenter. We were, bopping along with limited income. And my wife was like, "You're doing these little crappy houses, buying them for 20 grand and putting in 20 grand. How about we buy this building?" And so very reluctantly, I sat down at Freeze Architecture with Brian Freeze, who was part of the ownership structure of that thing. And he had done some renderings and he was trying to sell this project. And my wife thought it was a good idea if we had, purchased the building for a few million, spent a few $1 million doing the remediation of the asbestos inside. And if we were in this thing for, 15 or $20 million, she thought that was primo, exactly where we should be at that phase of our, of our financial journey. And of course I was like, God, I couldn't imagine it. And I shut it down pretty quickly, much to her dismay and disappointment. But lo and behold, you guys came along and decided this is right up your alley. Has beautiful Carrara marble on the outside. It was built, I guess, by Oral Roberts at some point in the past. And he was hot on the idea of fluorescent lights and not needing, or fluorescent lights being a modern invention and not needing outside light. So there are no windows in the building. It's a pretty stark, bit of architecture also. Tell me about that project, how you guys ended up doing it, what your vision for that building is.
Man, wow. Yeah, so that was one I think we jumped and then looked to see how far it was down. Another joke, I think we paid like 600 for it, and I think we overpaid by about $1.8 million. So. But other than that, it's going pretty well.
Long term, your guys are long term, very patient capital. That's what's good.
Yeah. So no, let's see. So there's too many funny stories on that one. So obviously full of asbestos. There was holes in the roof, the size of just school buses. So
wow.
Over time, the rain and everything, the asbestos had let go, and it was just all over the floor and just everywhere. So it was considered contaminated. So a person couldn't do anything at all without remediating the asbestos. You couldn't, generally you can pull a building permit, and still operate, but you couldn't do anything at all.
And so what's the risk? What's the risk that you go in there and the EPA already knows that this is a contaminated site? And so if you start doing work without properly remediating the mold, they're going to just slap a bunch of fines on you right off the bat?
I don't think you don't think you could never get a certificate of occupancy.
Got it.
So we looked at a wet remediation. So that's where you basically kind of tear the building down, but you encapsulate, keep the asbestos from going all over the neighborhood. We had an attorney that offices right behind the building, right across the alley, and then an environmental consultant that is on the other side of Cheyenne. That we'll come to find out later flies a drone over the Abundant Life building just for fun. So it was not a good area for a
truth is stranger than fiction. You couldn't write that. Okay.
Yeah, right. So okay. So we're just going to rear back and do this the right way, So, got a report, and I think it was something like $3 million to do the remediation. Like, no. No. And well, I mean, I'm exaggerating. I mean, we kind of looked at all this during due diligence. But nevertheless, 2.7 was kind of what everybody was thinking. But then you're kind of looking in there, and it's all this, scaffolding and all these things, So it's like I'm like, so you're telling me these guys set scaffolding up and use, a 6-inch putty knife and scrape every inch of this space to get like that? How is this? And so I got to, thinking and talking, and I was like, well, what if you could do what if we got the freight elevator going and, you could get scissor lifts in here instead of carrying scaffolding up these stairs and everything. So I got another bid, and it came down. I mean, it was a huge savings. I want to say it was like, I'm kind of going off memory, $1.8 million. I think it might've been a little bit less. Okay. Now we're kind of, okay. So then it's like, well, how do we find some elevator operator or mechanic squirrely enough to go in a building full of asbestos and get a freight elevator going? So we found one. This guy, we got the elevator going. So the gist, I guess, we probably saved $1 million, maybe a little bit more on asbestos remediation. And it cost us about $230,000 to get the freight elevator going. We did a lot of the work kind of to the cab ourselves. And then we kind of but it was a little bit unique because we had to, obviously you had to get a state inspector in there, to approve the elevator. So it was I'm not really sure how that works still, to be honest. But got the elevator going for, I think, yeah, all in probably less than 250. And so, it was a
Wow.
good turn. Just to save $1 million for 250,000, I guess. So, I mean, that's good. Um,
And
and
what's it going to be ultimately?
yeah, like multifamily over there generally.
Are you going to punch holes in the
Definitely,
walls and actually put lights in?
definitely, yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely have to do that. We saved all the marble. It's in a warehouse. Kind of funny.
Wow. I
We
mean,
took
that's
it.
super nice marble. I was wondering
Yeah,
if you'd be able to salvage any of it after you pulled it off. So it's in like triangle shapes because it had done this peak thing. What are you thinking of doing with that marble?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'd like to use it someplace,
Yeah.
but don't know how just yet. But yeah, it's kind of funny. We took all the marble off the building, and there was a ladder above the passenger elevator doghouse, and took the marble off. And when you step on that ladder, it clicks. So it's about an eighth of an inch. The building kind of lifted up with all that marble that came off. That was
Wow.
yeah, it was kind of wild. But yeah, it's a cool building. I mean, it's huge, and but
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes. So any projection of when you'd actually get a certificate of occupancy and start putting people in there?
yeah. So we got the asbestos out actually be a year ago, just this last January, end of January. And we were gonna finish the brute, and then we were really trying to get a new build across from Double Shot over there. There's a couple lots on
Yeah.
trying to get that in before. So we were awarded. We haven't finalized the development agreement or anything yet, but we were awarded a city issued an RFP for the Crybaby Hill site.
To
It's
do what?
Route 66 and Riverside, kind of a mixed use Route 66 kind of interpretive center,
But
multifamily.
is that on the little park in that little
Yeah,
that
yeah,
little park area, the green
yeah.
space now?
Yeah, 2 acre piece the city owns. Yep.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
And so you're going to do that, and you'll do the thing across from Double Shot before you finalize plans for getting the Abundant Life building up and running.
I think so. Yeah, I think, yeah, we need to, sorry, we need to, yeah, we need to deliver the Route 66 project by the centennial, which is November of 26.
Yeah, cool. Thinking through other podcast episodes and other people that you respect in the industry, who are some folks that you think would be interesting for us to talk to about leadership experience in Tulsa, Oklahoma, real estate expertise? Who do you follow on podcasts? What are you reading these days? Any inspirational stuff?
And I'm reading the Farmer's Almanac, 2023 Farmer's Almanac.
Anything you've gleaned from the Farmer's Almanac?
um, yeah, we're starting garden from seed this year, and I've got a couple good planting days, I think, coming up. We're going to start inside here pretty quick. So we got watching the moon phases, important things like that. No, I think, locally people, there's a lot of, you've mentioned, David Charney. I think he's, just super great. And obviously Ross, super great. You mentioned Elliott, another,
Yeah.
really strong. Yeah, I think, it's Aaron Meek is interesting to me. He's got just a fantastic portfolio, sneaks around. He's really under the radar. I really think highly of him. I think despite blowing the deal up on us at 11th and Peoria, but I like him. I'm just trying to think. Kimberly Norman, that's another good operator. Yeah, she's super solid multifamily owner.
What is she? I've never heard that name. What's she working on?
She has, I don't even know how many, but what's that? Is it called Forest Orchard? I think that's a neighborhood I feel,
Wow.
I might be wrong. In the neighborhood's an area I've really been interested in is haven't done anything about it, but I'll talk about it, is between Peoria and Hillcrest,
Uh-huh.
11th and the BA, that little, I want to say that's Forest Orchard or something like that. I've always kind of just really wanted to do something in there, and just never have. She's got a lot of the multifamily in there.
Cool. Love to have her on
super
and chat with her.
Yeah, she's
Never heard that name.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, those are, that's what I like, just kind of under the radar, just kind of doing cool stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Brian, thanks for being on. Brian's a Tulsa native doing some amazing things in the communities, managing the family office for David Sharp, which has in excess of 500,000 square feet of improved space and some vacant land. He's been with David for 8 years doing awesome stuff. So he's certainly been part and parcel, or an intricate part of developing downtown Tulsa, the Tulsa Arts District, and some other great spaces. Brian, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.